Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Garth, Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, and you're listening to the Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast series. Follow along as I interview the best and brightest leaders in the insurance industry and insurtech landscape to bring you the latest in digital transformation, innovation, industry trends, challenges, and opportunities, as well as next-gen technologies. We use our experience to anticipate what's next without losing sight of what's now. Stay tuned to find out your next now. Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast for Future of Insurance. I am thrilled today to have a dear friend, Gail McGiffin, joining me. Gail is the Global Insurance Advisory Lead at EPAM. Welcome, Gail.
Yeah, thanks, Denise. It's nice to be with you again and have our virtual time here together on one of my favorite topics right now.
I know, both of ours. So you and I have been in this industry for a long period of time. We know a lot of people, but you know what? Not everybody always knows everybody. So one of the things I'd like to do is have you kind of introduce yourself, give a little bit of your background, what EPAM does, and then our partnership.
Happy to do that. So I've been in the industry a long time, never worked anywhere other than insurance right after college. And I started my career in industry. I was in commercial underwriting and product development at Chubb for a long time, and they let me build systems. I spent some time at Accenture building that global underwriting practice and building an underwriting workbench and some other solutions along the way and working globally with all kinds of insurance companies around the world. I had a stint as a startup CIO at ProSite Specialty, which is now CoAction, built that company from scratch as a global specialty company with the Lloyd's presence, helped build EY's consulting practice going back to 2012 when we were, getting back into it and building a global underwriting practice there and really teaming with a lot of solution providers, including Majesco along the way. And then did a second startup with Vantage Group Holdings where I was the CIO and COO, and that was one of the class of 2020 startups. And we built that company ground up, all best of breed solutions, digital front to back, and both reinsurance and insurance, and worked with Majesco as a client at that time, as you know, and then joined EPAM about 2.5 years ago to build an advisory practice. EPAM is a long-standing, 30-plus year engineering firm, and we are in most of the Fortune 500 companies, including some very big software product development firms around the world. And we actually work with a lot of insurance companies. And we have been on the digital frontier for a long time, including a lot of AI work along the way. And so now we're complementing that with deep insurance advisory capabilities and bringing, thought leadership and capabilities along with our engineering. So both the strategy and execution for the insurance industry. So we're excited to bring something new into the market globally.
Well, I know that we've really enjoyed this partnership with EPAM the last 2.5 years, and seeing the growth and the joint opportunities together has been fantastic. So one of the things that I love to talk about, and it is the hottest topic in the industry, is GenAI. A lot of people initially thought that, this is just another piece of technology, but it's so much more. And it really is about changing the business operating model and processes for insurance. How do you see GenAI, and what discussions are you having with insurers, Gail?
So let me start with this. I think GenAI is not to be feared, but to be embraced with cautious experimentation. But I do see it differently than some of the other waves we've seen over the years, including RPA and blockchain and some others. But I also think we're in the early stages of understanding both its power and its risk. AI is not new. Generative AI is, or at least as of 2021. AI has actually been used for decades, including in insurance. I remember working on developing neural nets for an underwriting segmentation many years ago, machine learning, inference rules engines for sophisticated underwriting rules automation and claim pattern analysis. But what makes generative AI different is the advent of the hyperscale computing and the sheer speed, but combined with human-like output, semantic search, content generation, augmented task generation, summarization, observational learning, and of course, very importantly, the conversational analytics that we're seeing and doing today. And I think that's going to bring an order of magnitude change to both our personal and our business lives. So I do think that this is quite different, and it is on the scale as what the internet has done for our personal and business lives. And maybe that's a very bold statement, but we're seeing it already, and it is much more than a hype. I would say I do think, like a lot of these technologies, there's the hype and the reality, and I think we're still on that journey. But we are advancing at such a pace that we're already seeing some of the business outcomes and the use cases, and they're proving out. And what's great is insurance is actually on the frontier of this. We're not always on the frontier of technology, but that's exciting. And look, for the industry, I don't think GenAI is posing an existential threat either, by the way, to the knowledge worker in insurance. Our view is that it is really augmenting and enriching what it is the knowledge worker does. And we'll talk a lot about underwriting, claims, and finance are kind of just three examples, but some of the deep, knowledge aspects of what an insurance company does. What feels different to me, I think, about the dawn of the internet versus I think it's the potential of generative AI. I think the internet was gateway for us, but it was also a browser that we ran all day long. What I see with generative AI is that it has the potential to be embedded across the entire value chain of an insurance company in terms of, again, enabling the knowledge worker, and not just for efficiency, but also for effectiveness. And think about generative AI being embedded in all insurance applications. Doesn't matter whether they're packaged or custom. It's on every single laptop with, Microsoft or whatever. And it's going to be in most functional processes. Like, that's quite different. That's in the fabric of what we do. And I think the internet arrived as a separate browser. I think generative AI is going to be pervasive across end to end, regardless of browsers. It's going to be headless. It's going to be invisible. It is invisible on our phones. And I think we need to think about, the way we work in insurance is changing in a very similar way. Our discussions with clients are ranging, because we're an engineering firm, we're working with clients on the engineering side of generative AI as well as the business use cases. And so we are, helping engineers with legacy code migration, with GenAI based testing across, package and custom apps. And we have platforms to actually embed and orchestrate with APIs and LLMs, business processes for claims, for underwriting. So we're doing a lot in this space, but we're helping engineers as well as helping the business. That probably puts us in a little bit of a different position than a lot of firms that are serving the insurance industry. So we get to see the new dawn, if you will, of engineering changing really across sectors, but then we're also seeing the value to insurance companies early on. The areas where we're seeing the use cases get the most traction, I would say, in the value chain are digital ingestion, first and foremost. Almost everybody's doing something on that front, particularly commercial and specialty that are very document intensive. The business case is very strong there. So everybody's doing something, if not at the enterprise level, they're doing it within departments, underwriting departments, claim departments, things like that. I think that the other area that we're seeing is early stage analytics in really cross data analytics, right? In terms of reinsurance bordereaux, in terms of, looking at books of business for underwriting, portfolios for claims. So it's definitely coming into the analytical side of what our insurance clients are doing. So it's both on the transactional side as well as, I would say, the analytical side. So I think, again, early stage, but if you think about underwriting, claims, and I would say to some extent finance, it's helping just work with documents and data completely differently and bringing a new kind of analytics, a new kind of augmented information on top of the traditional sources. And companies are trying to figure out, like, how do I bring this all together? But that's what we're seeing in terms of, the differences maybe from the internet, but also where insurance is getting some traction and some early stage business outcomes.
One of the things that I find really interesting is how quickly Gen AI is really transcending generations. We've often seen some of the tech come out and the younger generation's the one that quickly adopts it and gets excited about it. But this has really taken off, and it's a really powerful one that can be used by anyone. And it's really significantly bending learning curves. It's helping to improve productivity and more. And for those people that have been inside an insurance company or the insurance industry for 20, 30 years, doing claims, doing policy, doing risk management, whatever it may be, they're excited about this because we're finding that it really helps them, to your point, augmenting their expertise and knowledge, that they can do the really rich things on behalf of customers and not have to do the manual, the menial types of stuff. Talk about how you're talking to business leaders and how they're seeing it and what guidance you would give on that it's not something to be feared because it's actually getting adopted pretty rapidly.
It's interesting. I feel like, and I probably have a somewhat different perspective than a lot of people because I have been on the business side and the IT side. I've been a CIO, I run a P&L, and I've worked with lots of insurance companies in a consulting capacity. I actually think the greatest challenge with this technology is engagement with the business. And I know every technology says that. No, this is a very different type of technology that IT, it's not enough for IT to have business IQ and business to have IT IQ, right? The level of integration and engagement has to get so much tighter in order to really have the business understand, because they have to drive a lot of this, right?
Yes.
And so for the business to understand the power of it, they have to get in and play with it. Start with the browser, right? Before we bring you headless APIs. IT, this isn't about pipes and plumbing, and like this isn't a package application even, right? And so I think that what we're seeing is it's not just a new tech, it's actually a new way for business engagement to work. And this is an industry that has a ways to go on that. The other thing I would say is that, underwriters and claims people and finance people in this industry, they must trust the data.
Exactly.
And so that is something that we're not there yet. It's not just about a new helpful technology for the knowledge worker. They need to know that when they are running a search or they get information, it's been digitally mapped, whatever, that it's trustworthy, because it's very, very different from the normal stuff, which, by the way, is not great, but it's different, and different doesn't mean it's trusted right away. And so I think the transparency, the traceability of the sources of information for LLMs, just as an example, and knowing the lineage of the data from the document before it's mapped into your underwriting workbench, your policy system, your claim system, is actually a very important part of this journey across generations. Because if we don't build the trust in the information that's now coming in ways, this won't get traction. It'll be perceived as complicated or confusing, or it's too much risk because I don't really trust the source where this came from. So I think that's particularly unique for the insurance industry, and particularly underwriting and claims. So I think that is actually, it transcends generations. And I think that what's interesting is it's almost going to be, I think, a normalizing tech across generations of workers, because whether it's browser-based or it's headless, it almost doesn't matter what your experience level is or where you are in the organization. It is a great normalizer in terms of information access, helping with analytics. So, and I don't know if we can say that about a lot of other technologies along the way, but I do think that that's a characteristic of this technology. It might be a little bit different from some other ones that we've lived through.
Yeah, it's almost like your discussion and description around how it really brings that IT and business divide together. And it really is normalizing, creating that. We've had it for decades, and it's growing wider and it's growing smaller, but it's always been there. It's been a challenge. I really like how this really kind of brings them together, because IT can't do it without business. It has to be about the business use cases and what's going to help them do their jobs.
Exactly right.
Really getting that value of GenAI. I talk about this a lot, Gail, and you and I've talked about this. We've been transforming for decades. We've done a lot of work. We've had a lot of transformation projects, but we really haven't been able to optimize the business yet from a process standpoint. And I think this is where GenAI really has the real potential to not just transform the business, but to really truly drive optimization and getting efficiency and productivity. And some of the benchmarking we've done, we're seeing 10 to 20 times, productivity in some of these different transactions. And the bottom line of that is that it helps reduce the unit costs. It helps reduce the cost ratios. It helps improve the customer satisfaction, because you're able to provide them with the information in a much more quick manner. That just creates, in my mind, limitless opportunities and possibilities for the business. So let's kind of talk about what those opportunities are in some different areas of insurance. So let's talk about underwriting. How do you see it from an underwriting perspective?
It's interesting. I think this is going to be both efficiency and effectiveness. I think we're seeing the early days of effectiveness. And let's be honest, most insurance companies, like a lot of businesses, don't want to make an investment unless there's a clear bottom line benefit. So I think that's fine. I think digital ingestion, I think being able to speed analytics, get access to talk to your data faster. So it's helping these knowledge workers, all good with efficiency. But I also think that there's an effectiveness business case. And I think that's actually going to ring the bell in ways we probably can't fully imagine right now. Again, we have ways to go with experimentation. We've got to integrate it into our core processing, into, underwriting workbenches and things like that. But think about the potential implications for decision making, not taking away decisions, but being the ultimate co-pilot to help the underwriter and the claim adjuster with their decisions. Now, that requires generative AI coexisting with other technologies. We do hear people saying, oh, I don't need these other engines anymore. I have generative AI. It's going to do everything. So no, it's not going to replace the underwriter, the claim adjuster anytime soon. It's going to make them better, faster, however you want to think about that. But we have to figure out how it's going to coexist across a very complicated technology landscape, because it's not just about the browser, right? And so with that, it has to coexist alongside rules engines, task engines, predictive models. It has to be embedded in their core applications like you guys are already doing. So if we assume that that's where it's headed, we like to frame this as a now, next, and beyond discussion. Okay. Because it is a journey. We happen to think that the trajectory is going to be pretty steep, pretty fast with this technology because of what we're already doing and seeing. But let's go to underwriting. I remember just even last year, everybody kind of had browsers up, like, let's go play with this. And then Copilot arrived, and so I think that the now, and I would say this is true not just for underwriting, was very much around experimentation. And the now is also this digital ingestion.
Yep.
And there's, a lot of different answers out there, some custom, some insurtech, whatever, but there's been a lot of work in that area. And I think of that as the now. I think where we're going is really getting power out of things like document comparison and analytics. And that could be for underwriting. That could be, comparison of the documents coming in a submission. It could be comparison of competitor forms. So I think we haven't, the technology's there. I don't think we've quite seen that yet, but that's a matter of underwriters getting more comfortable, more fluent, if you will, and starting to bake it into their day-to-day. Right now, we've seen a lot of POCs. It hasn't really been operationalized, but as it does, from digital ingestion into using various LLMs for document interrogation and query and things like that in comparison, we're now going to see that next, almost step change in terms of the world of documents, in the underwriting process. And I think the beyond now, as you bring it alongside some of these other technologies, and you're looking at risk triage and assessment being different, you're looking at being able to benchmark against cohort risks differently maybe than we ever have. You're going to be able to leverage new forms of information that you haven't previously had access to. You have to reconcile all of that with your traditional sources, but I think that that's when it gets really integrated into the core processes, and it's almost the invisible assistant. It's just there. So I think that's how we think about it, is almost horizons of where we are now, where can it go next, where does it need to go ultimately to be operationalized and get the full value. And that's certainly the underwriting story in our view.
Oh, I love that. I love that horizon view. So let's go to policy issuance. What's going to happen there?
We're seeing a little bit of this already. And some of it's like, think about policy checking, like the broker side of that. Fantastic. Let's go after that one right now, right? So the capabilities are there, and we're still sort of early days. Again, a lot of it's browser-based. Let me read the document. We think that's the next frontier, and actually brokers being a great example, CSRs, to go after that. We're definitely seeing ingestion of bordereau. That's a big one, right? It's a pretty clear use case, and everyone knows no bordereau is the same. So this technology is hugely important for not only the ingestion, but the mapping, right? That has to happen around that. So we are seeing that. Beyond, we think that the whole process of issuance and quality checks and comparisons actually gets much more automated, and you start getting some velocity around that. So we think issuance can go that path. Issuance may be less about decision-making of the knowledge worker and more about getting higher levels of performance and accuracy in straight-through processing, for example, in issuance.
So what about policy servicing, the renewals and the cancellations, because that can get to be a real manual and difficult effort as well.
It does. So if you think about in the world of underwriting, and we'll use sort of commercial and specialty as the example, you have simple risks, small, all the way up to large, complex, multinational. And we think that this technology will play a little bit differently across the spectrum of risk complexity. And so if you think about sort of the no-touch, low-touch underwriting and straight through that small commercial has used rules engines for example, we think that GenAI is going to bring an augmentation of bringing in other sources of information into that rules process. So again, this is an example of it's riding shotgun with other technologies to actually enrich the rule performance to automate some of those rules, to compare, historical claim results against, maybe peer group risks. I mean, think about the perspective you can get, and now you can actually get better rules and better automation. For the more complex risks, it won't go into a rules engine. Now you're going to serve it up through their workbench and say, okay, this renewal is, here's some observations on what's happening with cohort risks or what we've, been monitoring with the competitive landscape. Now all of a sudden I have insights beyond that renewing policy. I can think about the analytics and I can maybe price that differently or, tailor my quote proposal and look at limits and deductibles. So now I have insights that are comparative insights, perhaps as an example, that actually make me better equipped to hold on to that renewal with my broker. So it has a range of applications. It will play a little differently according to the spectrum of risk complexity, we think.
And that's going to really change the game of really managing a portfolio risk going forward, something that we're really struggling with today. What about billing, receivables, and payments? It's the thing that hits customers every single day.
Yep.
And it's the thing that we often think about it as the back office, but there's some real potential there.
There is. And, it's funny you say that because it is the area that people always want to forget about. And yet it is one of the most important customer touch points, particularly for anything that's direct bill, as you know, but even agency bill. And you think about just one of the more complicated processes out there. And you think about the trend we have with some of the payment platforms coming in to handle the banking interfaces and things like that. We haven't seen a ton right now on use cases for billing, but we think we will. So we think the upcoming horizon, if you will, is to actually be able to bring in additional source of information for account reconciliation and to really know what's going on with collections, the activity going on at the account level, not just in that additional policy, right?
Yep.
To be able to bring sources of information, maybe from some of these other platforms, know what's going on with claims at the same time. So if you even just think of the ecosystem of information and the other systems to collect, aggregate, check for quality, things like that, we do think there's a role for GenAI to come into the billing and the receivable process along the way. A little further out, beyond, we think that both generative AI and machine learning are actually going to help with things like reconciliation. Again, whether it's direct or definitely in the account, the agency account billing side, in the premium accounting processes, and for that matter, even the financial processing operations, that reconciliation process is arduous, right? Takes time, lots of complicated handoffs between systems, between people. So we see lift coming in terms of just having a little more straight through, not just automation, but quality assessment along the way in the billing and collection process.
The other one that it's the moment of truth, it's claims first notice of loss, Gail.
Yes. So this is actually another area, not unlike digital ingestion with underwriting, where we're seeing a fair amount of traction, starting with the F&OL process. Okay. And so in fact, it probably has started more there than even browser-based experimentation, I would say. So we're seeing a lot of investment in GenAI powered digital ingestion to get document sources, by the way, images as well. And then, of course, as you know, with the technology, we have this convergence of image, text, and voice coming. Think about the power of what a call center will be able to do, not just a portal with documents in it. So there's a range of possibilities. So it's not only document ingestion, we are seeing early stage, I'll say, experimentation in this convergence of insights with generative AI, being able to look at text, audio, video, at the same time. So more to come on that one, but early stage is probably document focused. We think the next is improved insights. And again, going after patterns of behavior and data to look at triage and assignment and using generative AI alongside some of the other rule pattern automation that's happening, but to augment the insight and compare it to other patterns of claim handling, because you're looking at the whole portfolio along the way, part of that. And then I think the beyond stage, boy, I think we all hope this one gets here sooner, is claim fraud. This is going to be somewhat about efficiency, but a lot about effectiveness. And think about if you can have not just dynamic damage assessment, but actually have a universe of fraud indicators that go beyond what we see today, because we kind of have a normal way of handling it and it's still more manual and there's tools that score, but they're scoring off of what they know. Think about if you enrich the insights about not just what came in on the claim, and for that matter, even your own experience in claim history with that account or other accounts, but think about bringing in information around the site of the accident on that day, right? The circumstances around the vehicle or the employee when they were injured. If we can, grab that universe of additional digital data that can be sensor data as well, and now pull that in and compare it to the facts and information we have, not to mention bringing in voice, right? Sentiment and image. Now we have a chance to go after claim fraud in ways we really haven't before.
Oh, totally. Now we have the full set of claims processing. That once you get the first notice of loss, there's a lot of processing and it can get pretty complicated depending upon the complexity of the claim. If there's injuries, if there's the need for potential litigation. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can happen here. So talk about that.
It's interesting. I think that we believe that there's a role for generative AI in things like loss estimation, right? So not just the front end of the process of the intake of FNOL, but also in terms of helping that knowledge worker, that claim adjuster in the process of evaluation. And think of all the sources they use and think of all the interfaces with the supply chain. That can be lawyers for litigation. It can be body shops. It can be the medical community. And so again, we see a role in kind of, faster, better information retrieval and analysis and comparison, not to mention digital mapping into the core claim system as enabling the claim process in ways we just haven't seen before. So to me, that's like the heart of the claim adjustment and management processes that goes well into the claim organization well after the FNOL has arrived. So we see tremendous lift, again, alongside other forms of automation. Your core claim system has a lot of automation already built in, but it's about bringing in these information insights to help the knowledge worker not just automate a process, but actually enrich those decisions along the way and throw flags up when there's something they should look at because you've identified some unusual patterns using the power of GenAI.
When I think about from underwriting through claims, this technology, not just what's kind of happening now and what's going to be happening in the next phase, but really kind of that visioning of where it really has the potential to go. It's truly different. And it's going to require insurers to really reconsider the partners in terms of their infrastructure, in terms of their core platforms, in terms of their SI and consultants, because it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to plug this little technology in. You got to really rethink the whole business model and really your overall architecture. And it changes, quite frankly, the playbook for tech implementation going forward.
Absolutely, it
So
does.
kind of give your perspective on that. What should insurers be considering? Because the pace of this, if your providers aren't doing something with it now and the pace of this is going the way it is, you're going to be left behind.
I totally agree. It's funny because having lived through the early days when everything was custom development, because we didn't really have good packages like we do now, and then we went into a world of, look, we've made a lot of progress with our core processing platforms because we have great options now. And so what that's done is it's grown a universe of system integrators, like really certified, scalable cookbook system integrators that do a pretty reliable job. I had some of this my background myself, by the way, coming into EPAM. This is not that same era, okay? This is the era of engineering again, but it's generative AI engineering. It's not custom build engineering for a policy or claim system.
Yeah.
And that is vastly different from what system integrators do. It is, and it's not just technical engineering skills around this technology arena. It is actually business engineering skills that go along with it. Like, wow, this really is different, right? Also, to your point, this is not an application I license. I'm building these, right? And your point about sort of the complicated landscape, I totally agree with that because think about it. We all have Copilot now because we have Microsoft Outlook and it's phenomenal, right? And we can use Word and PowerPoint and SharePoint and Excel. And like, we're figuring that out right now. So everybody's going to have something on their laptop as well as their phone. But now I'm going to bring in my Majesco suite. And I've got this phenomenal Copilot in my policy system up and running. Cool. So package systems are embedding GenAI, right, along the way to help to educate, all of those things. And then I'm going to bring in maybe some point solutions that are out there with some of the insurtechs that are augmenting something around underwriting or claims. Digital ingestion would be another one. So now I've got a universe of point solutions. And then I'm probably going to custom build some things along the way. So I'm actually going to need an enterprise infrastructure that allows me to integrate my LLMs with my APIs. Like that's going to come into the core of the integration architecture. It is not just APIs the way we thought about it. You're going to be orchestrating how and when you're calling the LLMs and which LLMs. You're going to have layers of LLMs. It's not just one LLM. That's where we're headed. And so it is absolutely, I would say, a call to action to bring engineers to this. And when I say that, that's not just, I mean, clearly we're doing a lot of that because of the firm we are and the skills and experience we have. But I actually think that insurance companies need to also be building in some of these competencies themselves, right? Yeah. And it's probably some different people than maybe those that have been maintaining some of your core processing apps to build some technology engineering capabilities and business engineering capabilities alongside, because that's the best partnership. You can't outsource that fully. You have to build a partnership and you have to share the knowledge along the way because nobody has all the answers. So I think that's what's going to be different.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's just going to be so transformative because I think we're really going to get to that point of not just doing the same things. We're really going to really rethink and doing that through engineering. This has been a fantastic conversation, Gail. It's so exciting. And I'm so excited that we're partners together because you and I get to talk a lot about this stuff together then. But one of the things I like to do at the end of every podcast is to have my guests use one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance and why. So what would yours be, Gail?
You know, at the outset, we talked about this session being about sort of myths and possibilities, which I think is a fantastic description for GenAI. I like to focus on possibilities because I think this is not just experimental. This is ubiquitous. And we're not choosing to adopt this. It is here. I think we just have to all be compelled to learn it, figure it out, test and learn. And business has to work different with IT. IT has to work different. The partners in the SI ecosystem and engineering, like we all have to be doing different things. But I think those are all possibilities, not hurdles. I'd like to think 10 years from now that this industry is going to be powered by this era of technology in ways that maybe are as disruptive and, move the needle in the way the internet did. But I think it's actually in a very durable way that carries on for a generation. You look back and say, how did we ever work that way? Sort of like we do with our cell phones and we do with the internet. But I truly think this will be not just ubiquitous, but I think it'll be embedded in our package systems, in our entire technology landscape, but also the way we work. Fast forward, underwriters are going to actually kind of know how to prompt engineer and claims too, right?
Yeah.
But we're going to have generative AI operating in a headless, very invisible way, sort of the invisible guiding hand as part of all of our core processes. So I like to think of the possibilities of that because this industry needs that. And that's exciting to me.
And I like that to end with that because I think that those possibilities and that durability that you talk about is so needed because we've got protection gaps that are growing out in the industry for individuals and for businesses. And we know we have to underpin the economy and those businesses and people for risk because otherwise the economy doesn't grow. People can't buy homes. They can't start businesses, all of those types of things. So it's got to help us close that protection gap really, really well.
Yes, it's the new form of enabling what resilience looks like in the future for this industry, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Gail, as always, it's always fun talking with you. I appreciate
Likewise.
it.
Thanks for the time.
And looking forward to the next horizon of GenAI.
Too. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
That's it for this week's episode of Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast. Subscribe to our market-leading podcast series available wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening and be sure to tune in the next time.